I grew up in Ohio, spent most of my career working geological surveys in the Midwest, where the biggest dangers were ticks and the occasional thunderstorm. I knew almost nothing about the Southwest or its people when I accepted the assignment in northeastern Arizona. That ignorance nearly cost me my life. My name is Graham Hollis. I am 31 years old, and I work as a geologist for a mining company that was exploring potential sites in the Four Corners region. The assignment seemed straightforward. 3 weeks of field work in remote desert and canyon country, collecting samples, mapping formations, writing reports. I approached it the way I approach every job, practically, professionally, without much thought about anything beyond the geology. That was my first mistake. I arrived at a small trading post on the edge of the Navajo Nation in early October. The building sat at a crossroads, serving the scattered residents of the surrounding area. An elderly Navajo man named Hosteen Begay owned the place. He rented me a small cabin behind the store and sold me supplies for my field work. Hosteen was friendly but reserved. He asked what I was doing in the area, nodded politely when I explained about the geological survey. But when I mentioned I would be camping out in the field for several nights, something changed in his expression. He asked if I knew the rules. I did not understand the question, asked what rules he meant. Hosteen studied me for a long moment. Then he said there were things that outsiders did not know about this land, things that the Diné, the Navajo people, had learned over generations, rules that kept people safe. He said the most important rule was simple: never whistle at night. I laughed, thought the old man was joking or testing me or sharing some colorful local folklore. Hosteen did not laugh. His expression remained serious, almost sad. He said I should remember the rule, said it was not a joke, not a story, not something to dismiss. Then he handed me my supplies and went back inside the trading post. I did not take the warning seriously, did not think about it again as I drove out into the desert to begin my survey. I should have listened. The survey area was beautiful in a stark, harsh way. Red rock formations rising from sandy desert, juniper trees scattered across the landscape, distant mesas standing against the endless blue sky. I spent my days hiking through the terrain, taking samples, mapping formations, doing the work I had been trained to do. The geology was interesting, the weather was perfect, and I found myself enjoying the solitude. I made camp each night in different locations, setting up my tent near whatever feature I planned to survey the next day. The nights were cold but clear, filled with more stars than I had ever seen in Ohio. On the third night, I made camp in a small canyon, sheltered from the wind by high rock walls. I cooked my dinner over a camp stove, watched the sunset paint the rocks in shades of orange and red, and settled in for another quiet evening. I was cleaning my cooking gear when I started whistling. It was unconscious, automatic, a habit I had developed years ago, whistling while I worked. I did not even realize I was doing it until I was halfway through an old folk song my father used to sing. Then I remembered Hosteen's warning, never whistle at night. I stopped, looked around at the darkening canyon, at the shadows gathering between the rocks, felt foolish for even considering that the warning might be real. I laughed at myself, finished cleaning my gear in silence. more out of respect for the old man than any genuine belief. But as I crawled into my tent that night, I could not shake the feeling that something had changed, that the quality of the silence around me was different than it had been before, that something was listening. The changes started small, nothing dramatic, nothing I could point to as proof that something was wrong, just a growing sense of unease that I could not explain. I started seeing movement at the edge of my vision, shapes that disappeared when I turned to look at them, shadows that seemed to move against the direction of the sun. I heard sounds at night, footsteps outside my tent, circling slowly, never approaching, but never leaving either. When I looked outside, I saw nothing, just the empty desert, the silent rocks, the stars overhead. My sleep became restless. I woke multiple times each night, convinced that something was standing just outside the thin fabric of my tent, waiting, watching. I returned to the trading post after a week to resupply, found Hosteen behind the counter, his eyes studying me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. He asked how the survey was going. I said it was going fine. Started to leave it at that, then found myself describing the strange experiences, the movement at the edge of my vision, the sounds at night, the feeling of being watched. Hosteen's expression grew grave. He asked if I had whistled. I hesitated, then admitted that I had, once on my third night in the field, just for a few seconds, without thinking. Hosteen closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was something like pity in his gaze. He said I had called something, had invited it to follow me, to watch me, to consider whether I was worth taking. He said the whistling was like a signal in the darkness, a sound that certain things listened for. I asked, what things? What I had called? What was following me? Hosteen shook his head, said there were names that should not be spoken, especially not by outsiders, especially not when the thing might be listening. He said I should leave, should pack up my survey, drive away from this land, and never come back. But if I insisted on staying, he said, there were rules I needed to follow. Rules that might keep me safe long enough to finish my work and escape. Hosteen spoke carefully, choosing his words with obvious deliberation, avoiding certain names and descriptions. He said there were beings in this land that the DNA had known about for generations, beings that were neither human nor animal, that walked between worlds, that hungered for things that living people had, beings that listened in the darkness for sounds that invited them closer. Whistling was one of those sounds, a signal that could carry far across the desert night, that could reach ears that should never hear it. When someone whistled after dark, they were announcing their presence, calling attention to themselves, inviting something to come and investigate. Most of the time, nothing happened. The beings were not always listening, not always hungry, not always interested, but sometimes they were. Hosteen said the signs I had described, the movement at the edge of vision, the sounds at night, the feeling of being watched, those were indications that something had answered my call. Something was following me now, studying me, deciding what to do with me. I asked what it might do. What happened to people who were chosen? Hosteen was quiet for a long time. Then he said that some people disappeared, walked into the desert, and were never seen again. Others came back changed, their minds broken, unable to speak of what they had experienced. And some, the unlucky ones, became hosts for the thing that had chosen them, wore its influence like a second skin until they were no longer themselves at all. I felt cold despite the afternoon heat, asked how to make it stop, how to make the thing leave me alone. Hostine said once something had answered a call it could not be uncalled. The connection was made. The only question was whether I would survive it. But there were rules that could help. Things the Diné had learned over generations about how to coexist with these beings, how to avoid making the situation worse, how to possibly escape their attention. The rules were simple but absolute. First, never whistle again after dark. I had already made this mistake once, but repeating it would strengthen the connection, would tell the thing that I wanted its attention. Second, never look directly at anything strange I saw at night. The beings fed on acknowledgement, on recognition. If I saw movement in the darkness, I should look away. Pretend I had not noticed. Deny the thing the satisfaction of being seen. Third, never answer if I heard my name called from outside my tent. The beings could mimic voices, could sound like friends or family or strangers asking for help. If I heard my name after dark, I should stay silent. Should not respond, should not go outside, should not acknowledge the call. Fourth, never travel alone after dark. The beings preferred isolated prey, people who had separated themselves from others. I should return to my camp before sunset, stay inside my tent until dawn, avoid being caught in the open when darkness fell. Fifth, never run. If I encountered something directly, if the thing revealed itself to me, I should walk away slowly and calmly. Running triggered the predator instinct, told the thing that I was prey, invited pursuit. Sixth, carry protection. Hostine gave me a small pouch containing herbs and other items that I did not recognize. Said it had been blessed by a medicine man. Said it would not stop the thing, but might confuse it, might make me harder to find, might buy me time. Hostine said the rules were not guarantees. Following them perfectly might still not be enough if the thing had decided to take me, but breaking them would definitely make things worse. He told me to finish my survey as quickly as possible and leave this land. Every day I stayed was another opportunity for the thing to act, another night in its territory, under its observation, within its reach. The longer I remained, the worse my chances became. I promised to work fast, promised to follow the rules, promised to leave as soon as my survey was complete. I did not realize how hard those promises would be to keep. I tried to follow the rules, tried to be careful, tried to deny the thing whatever satisfaction it sought from me. But the situation was getting worse. The sounds outside my tent grew louder. Not just footsteps now, but other noises. Scratching against the fabric, breathing that was too loud, too close, too deliberate to be any natural animal. I started hearing my name. It came from different directions, sometimes close and sometimes far away. A whispered call that sounded like my own voice, or like voices I remembered from childhood, or like no voice at all. Just my name, repeated over and over, inviting me to respond. I did not respond. Lay in my sleeping bag with my eyes closed. clutching the protection pouch, waiting for dawn. During the days, I worked faster than I had ever worked before. Rushed through my surveys, cut corners on my sampling, did the minimum necessary to complete my assignment. But the work took time. There was no way around it. On the 10th night, something new happened. I was in my tent, trying to sleep, when I heard movement directly outside. Not circling this time, just standing there, inches from the fabric wall, motionless and silent. Then it spoke. Not my name this time, not a whisper or a call. It spoke in a language I did not recognize, words that seemed to crawl into my ears and nest in my brain, words that made me feel sick, that made my vision blur, that made me want to tear open the tent and run screaming into the desert. I did not run, remembered Hostine's warning, lay perfectly still, eyes closed, not acknowledging, not responding. The voice continued for what felt like hours. Then, just before dawn, it stopped. When I emerged from my tent in the morning, I found tracks in the sand around me. Not human tracks, not animal tracks. Something else, something that walked on two legs, but left impressions that were wrong in ways I could not articulate. The tracks circled my tent dozens of times. Then they led away into the desert, disappearing over a ridge to the west. I packed my camp and moved to a new location, but I knew it would not help. The thing knew where I was, would always know where I was. It was my 12th night in the field, 3 days before my survey was supposed to end. I had been pushing myself hard, working from first light until last, trying to finish early, trying to escape. I made camp in a broad wash, a sandy riverbed that was dry this time of year. The walls of the wash rose around me, offering shelter from the wind, but limiting my visibility. I should have chosen a more open location, should have given myself room to see what was coming. The attack came just after sunset. I was in my tent, organizing my samples, when I heard something large moving through the wash. Not the subtle sounds I had grown used to, but heavy footsteps, deliberate and fast, coming directly toward me. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped outside without thinking, and saw it. I cannot describe what I saw. Standing in the wash 20 feet away, illuminated by the beam of my flashlight. There are no words in English for what it looked like, what it felt like to see it, what happened to my mind when our eyes met. It was tall, it moved wrong, and when it looked at me, I felt something fundamental break inside my head. I ran. I know I should not have. Knew that running was exactly what Hostine had warned me against. But the sight of the thing had overwhelmed every rational thought, had reduced me to pure animal panic. I ran through the wash, scrambling over rocks and sand, not knowing where I was going, just knowing I had to get away. The thing followed. I could hear it behind me, keeping pace easily, not even breathing hard, while my lungs burned and my legs screamed for rest. It could have caught me at any moment, could have ended the chase whenever it wanted. But it did not. It was playing with me, enjoying my terror, savoring the pursuit. I ran until I could not run anymore, collapsed against a boulder, gasping for breath, waiting for the thing to take me. The thing stopped, stood in the darkness beyond my flashlight beam, watching me. Then it spoke my name. Once, clearly, in my own voice. and it walked away. I did not wait for morning, did not return to my camp for my equipment, just started walking, following the stars, trying to reach the road that would take me back to civilization. I walked all night, heard sounds behind me the entire way, footsteps that matched my pace, breathing that seemed to come from just over my shoulder. But I did not look back, did not acknowledge whatever was following me. By dawn, I had reached the road, flagged down a passing truck, a Navajo family heading to the trading post. They took one look at me and knew something was wrong. The father said nothing, just drove faster. The mother whispered prayers in Navajo, her eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. The children in the back seat huddled together, refusing to look at me. They dropped me at the trading post, did not wait for thanks, did not ask for explanation, just drove away as soon as I was out of the truck. Hustine was waiting on the porch. His expression was grim, but not surprised. I tried to explain what had happened, could not find words for most of it, just said I had seen it, had run, had barely made it out. Hostine nodded, said I was lucky, said the thing had chosen to let me go, for reasons that only it understood. Said some people were taken on the first night, while others were released after weeks of torment. I asked why. Why me? Why had it let me live? Hostine shook his head, said no one understood the reasons. Maybe the thing had found me unworthy. Maybe it had been satisfied by my terror. Maybe it was simply not hungry enough to take me. Or maybe it was not finished with me yet. I left that day, drove south, then east, putting as many miles as possible between myself and the desert. But I was not sure I had really escaped. It has been 4 years since my assignment in Navajo country. I live in Colorado now, work for a different company, have tried to build a normal life far from the desert. But the thing is not gone. I still see movement at the edge of my vision, still hear sounds outside my window at night, still wake from dreams where something with my own voice is calling my name from the darkness. I have never whistled after dark since that October. Will never whistle again. But I know it does not matter. The connection was made years ago, in a canyon in Arizona, when I carelessly broke a rule I did not understand. The thing is still watching me, still following me, still deciding what to do with me. I have done research since then, have learned more about the beings that the Diné have always known about, have read accounts from others who encountered them, who barely escaped, who spent the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders. Some of those people disappeared eventually, vanished from their homes, their cars, their lives, leaving no trace. The connection that was made in the desert finally called them back. I do not know if that will happen to me. Do not know if the thing will ever come to claim what it marked that night. I only know that I am living on borrowed time, that my survival was a reprieve rather than an escape. I am writing this as a warning, not just about the specific rule I broke, but about all of it, about the casual dismissal of beliefs held by people who have lived on this land for generations, about the arrogance of assuming that folklore is just folklore, that warnings are just superstition, that there is nothing in the darkness worth fearing. The Navajo know things, have learned things through centuries of coexistence with forces that outsiders cannot comprehend. When they tell you not to whistle at night, listen to them. If you ever find yourself in the Southwest, In the desert lands where the Diné have lived for generations, pay attention to what the locals tell you, the rules they follow, the behaviors they avoid, the warnings they offer to strangers. These rules were not invented for entertainment. They were not created to frighten tourists or preserve colorful traditions. They exist because something in that land requires them. Something that has been there far longer than people, that will be there long after people are gone. Never whistle at night. Never answer voices that call your name from the darkness. Never run from something you cannot see. Never assume that you know better than people who have survived on that land for centuries. The shadows still follow me through parking lots. The sounds outside my bedroom window stop when I look, but resume when I turn away. The certainty grows stronger each year that the thing is getting closer, that the patience it showed in the desert is not infinite. Last week, I woke at 3 a.m. to a sound I had not heard in 4 years. Footsteps circling my house. Slow, deliberate, patient. I lay in bed and listened, not moving, not acknowledging, following the rules that Hosteen had taught me. The footsteps continued until dawn. I do not know what that means. Do not know if the thing is testing me again, tormenting me, or preparing to finally finish what it started. I only know that I will not whistle, will not look, will not run, and I will pray that the rules are enough to save me one more time. The Diné have survived alongside these beings for generations. They have learned how to coexist, how to show respect, how to avoid drawing the attention of things that should be left alone. I did not show respect, did not listen when I was warned, did not believe that a simple rule about whistling could matter. Now I live with the consequences. Every night, before I go to sleep, I check the locks on my doors and windows. I close the curtains so I will not be tempted to look outside if I hear something. I keep the protection pouch that Hosteen gave me under my pillow, even though I do not know if it still works this far from the desert. And I wait. Wait for the footsteps that circle my house. Wait for the voice that calls my name in my own voice. Wait for the night when the thing finally decides that my borrowed time has run out. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. The old warnings exist for a reason. The rules that seem like superstition, the taboos that seem outdated, the fears that seem irrational. They were written in blood by people who learned the hard way what lives in the darkness. Respect them, follow them, and never, ever whistle at night in Navajo country. Because something is listening, and once it hears you, it never stops.